The phone slipped from my fingers and cracked against the hardwood floor, the screen illuminating a profile picture I'd seen 1,000 times. A mysterious woman with smoky eyes and cherry-red lips who called herself Scarlet Moon. My husband's chat history with her stretched back 18 months, each message more intimate than the last, and I'd just discovered those manicured hands in the photos belonged to someone I knew. Someone who sat at my dinner table every Sunday. I am grateful you are here with me. Before we begin, I would really love to know where you are watching from. Comment your city below. Now, let me tell you about something that changed my life forever. My chest tightened as I scrolled through the messages again, my vision blurring at the edges. The timestamps matched exactly. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening when Lenora claimed she had yoga classes. My sister-in-law. The woman who'd worn black to my wedding and told everyone within earshot that her brother Marcus was making a mistake. The woman who kissed my cheek last Sunday while her burner phone buzzed with his replies in her designer purse. I grabbed my car keys from the kitchen counter, my hands trembling so violently I dropped them twice. The metal felt cold and sharp against my palm as I finally secured my grip. My wedding ring caught the afternoon light streaming through the window. 23 years of marriage reduced to evidence of my own blindness. The drive to Lenora's townhouse took 12 minutes, though I barely remembered steering. My foot pressed harder on the accelerator with each passing block, the engine roaring as traffic lights blurred from red to green. Other drivers honked as I cut through lanes, but their protests faded into white noise behind the thundering of my pulse in my ears. Her silver Mercedes sat in the driveway, pristine and mocking. I slammed my car door hard enough to rattle the windows, the sound echoing through the quiet suburban street. My heels clicked against the brick walkway, like gunshots, as I approached her door. The perfectly manicured roses lining her garden beds seemed to mock me with their artificial perfection. I didn't knock. My fist pounded against the mahogany door 3 times, each strike sending jolts of pain up my arm that I welcomed. Movement inside, footsteps approaching, cautious and slow. The deadbolt clicked. The door opened 6 inches, and Lenora's face appeared in the gap, her expression shifting from curiosity to guilt in the span of a heartbeat. "We need to talk," I said through clenched teeth. She attempted to close the door. My shoulder hit the wood before it could latch, and I pushed inside with all my weight. Lenora stumbled backward into her foyer, her silk robe falling open to reveal designer loungewear that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her phone sat on the entry table, screen glowing with a notification. Marcus's name. I could see it from where I stood. My hand shot out and grabbed the phone before she could react. She lunged forward, but I twisted away, holding the device above my head like a trophy I'd earned through years of blind trust. The screen illuminated my face with its damning evidence. A message preview showing heart emojis and the words, "Can't wait to see you tonight." "Give that back!" Lenora's voice cracked as she clawed at my arm, her perfectly manicured nails scraping against my skin. I shoved her backward with my free hand. She collided with the entry table, sending a crystal vase crashing to the marble floor. Water and roses exploded across the white surface, petals scattering like drops of blood. My thumb swiped across the screen, unlocking it with the password I'd watched her enter 100 times at family dinners, her daughter's birthday. The messages loaded. Line after line of intimate conversation scrolled before my eyes, each word carving deeper into my chest than the last. Photos appeared. Seductive poses I recognized from countless selfies she'd posted on social media. But these were different. These were meant for him, for my husband. The purple lingerie set I'd seen hanging in her bathroom last month during Thanksgiving dinner. the bedroom mirror behind her reflecting the same cream-colored walls I'd helped her paint 2 summers ago. "It's not what you think," she whispered, but the tremor in her voice betrayed the lie. I looked up from the screen, meeting her eyes for the first time since entering. Mascara had begun to streak down her cheeks, mixing with foundation that suddenly looked too thick, too desperate. My hands trembled as she wrapped her robe tighter around her body, as if modesty mattered now, as if anything about her could be hidden anymore. My legs carried me deeper into her home, past the foyer and into the living room where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where I'd held her hand after her divorce 3 years ago, promising her that family meant forever. The leather couch where I'd sat countless times now seemed foreign, contaminated. I scrolled through more messages, my jaw clenching tighter with each revelation. Pet names, inside jokes, plans to meet at hotels I'd never heard him mention. She followed behind me, maintaining a careful distance like prey watching a predator. Her breathing came in short, panicked bursts that filled the silence between us. A clock ticked somewhere in the kitchen, each second stretching into eternity as I absorbed the full scope of her betrayal. 6 months. The messages dated back 6 months, to right after Marcus and I had announced we were trying for another baby. Right after I'd confided in her about our struggles, our intimacy issues, our counseling sessions. The phone slipped from my fingers, hitting the hardwood floor with a crack. The screen spiderwebbed but remained lit, displaying a message from yesterday. Marcus telling Sienna, the name she'd chosen for her fake identity, that his wife didn't understand him anymore, that she'd let herself go, that coming home felt like walking into a prison. My vision blurred. Heat spread through my chest, radiating outward until my entire body burned with a fury I'd never experienced. I turned to face Lenora, watching her shrink against the doorframe. Her mouth opened and closed without sound, searching for words that could possibly explain this. That could possibly make this anything other than what it was. My hands moved before conscious thought caught up. I grabbed the crystal vase from the side table, the one Marcus had given Lenora for her birthday last year, and hurled it past her head. It exploded against the doorframe in a shower of glass fragments that rained down onto her shoulders. She screamed, arms flying up to shield her face, stumbling backward into the hallway. I advanced on her, my body operating on pure instinct. The rage had transformed into something physical, something that needed release through movement and destruction. My fingers curled into fists at my sides, nails digging crescents into my palms hard enough to draw blood. Each step forward drove her another step back until we'd crossed into the living room where family photos lined the mantel. She tried to speak, her lips forming the beginning of my name, but I held up one hand. The gesture silenced her immediately. My chest heaved with each breath, ribs expanding and contracting so violently I thought they might crack. Sweat beaded along my hairline despite the air conditioning pumping cool air through the vents. I moved to the mantel and swept my arm across it. Picture frames crashed to the floor. Marcus and Lenora at a barbecue, the whole family at Christmas, her wedding day where I'd stood as her maid of honor. Glass shattered in staccato bursts. I stomped on the closest frame, grinding my heel into the smiling faces until they disappeared beneath shards and splintered wood. Lenora pressed herself against the wall, sliding sideways toward the front door. Her eyes darted between me and the exit, calculating distances and escape routes. Mascara streaked down her cheeks in black rivers, mixing with the tears that wouldn't stop flowing. Her chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow movements that made her whole body tremble. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking. "Let me explain." The sound of her voice triggered something deeper. I lunged forward, closing the distance between us in 3 long strides. She flinched, throwing her hands up defensively, but I grabbed her wrist instead. My fingers wrapped around the delicate bones, feeling her pulse hammering against my thumb. I dragged her toward the coffee table where her laptop sat open, the screen dark but still warm. I shoved her down onto the couch with enough force that she bounced. Her head snapped back, blonde hair flying in all directions. Before she could move, I grabbed the laptop and flipped it open. The screen illuminated, showing her desktop, a photo of her late husband as the background. My stomach twisted at the irony. She'd used grief as currency, collected sympathy while simultaneously destroying my marriage. "Show me," I said through gritted teeth. "All of it." Her hands shook so violently she could barely work the trackpad. She opened her email, then a folder labeled Travel Photos. Such a mundane disguise for devastation. Inside were hundreds of screenshots. Messages between her and Marcus that spanned months. Photos she'd sent him. Carefully angled selfies that showed just enough. Voice memos where she'd disguised her voice, making it breathier, younger. I leaned over her shoulder, reading message after message. My hands gripped the back of the couch, knuckles white against the navy fabric. The room spun slightly as details emerged. She'd researched his favorite foods, his hobbies, everything I'd told her about him over years of sister-in-law bonding. She'd crafted the perfect woman based on my intimate knowledge, then offered that fantasy to my husband. A notification popped up on the screen. A new message from Marcus. My breath caught. I reached past Lenora and clicked it open before she could react. He was asking Sienna to meet him tonight at the Riverside Hotel downtown. Room 412. He'd already checked in. He had champagne waiting. Tonight. It was happening tonight. I straightened up from the laptop, my spine crackling with the sudden movement. The hotel information burned into my retinas. Riverside Hotel, room 412, tonight. My pulse hammered against my throat as I backed away from Lenora, who remained frozen on the couch like a cornered animal. Without a word, I grabbed my purse from where I'd dropped it near the door. My fingers fumbled with the zipper, finally extracting my phone. The screen lit up, showing 6:47 p.m. Marcus had sent that message to Lenora 17 minutes ago. My mind calculated rapidly. The Riverside was 20 minutes across town, maybe 15 if I pushed through yellow lights. Lenora stood slowly, her arms wrapped around herself. "What are you going to do?" I ignored her, scrolling through my contacts until I found my brother's number. David answered on the second ring, his voice cheerful and unsuspecting. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I need you to meet me at the Riverside Hotel in 30 minutes. Downtown location. Don't ask questions, just come." He started to protest, but I ended the call. My hands were surprisingly steady now, adrenaline replacing the shock that had paralyzed me earlier. I shoved the phone into my coat pocket and moved toward the door, but Lenora stepped into my path. My face had shifted from terrified to desperate, tears streaming down her cheeks in rivers of mascara. "Please, you can't," she whispered. "It'll destroy everything!" My laugh came out harsh and brittle. I stepped around her, my shoulder deliberately brushing hers as I passed. She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into the fabric of my coat. I spun back, yanking free with enough force that she stumbled backward into the coffee table. A ceramic vase teetered and crashed to the floor, shattering into jagged pieces across the hardwood. Neither of us looked at it. We stood facing each other, chests heaving, the space between us crackling with months of accumulated lies. I could see her weighing options, calculating whether she could physically stop me. I was younger by 6 years, but I had rage on my side. Pure, crystalline fury that made my muscles coil tight and ready. "You destroyed everything the moment you sent that first message," I said. Each word dropped between us like stones. "This is just the aftermath." I turned again, and this time she didn't try to stop me. My boots crunched over the ceramic shards as I crossed to the door, pulled it open, and stepped into the cold evening air. The door slammed behind me with a finality that echoed across the quiet street. My car sat at the curb where I'd abandoned it 20 minutes ago, though it felt like hours had passed since I'd stormed up to confront Lenora. I climbed in, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb without checking my mirrors. A horn blared behind me, but I barely registered it. My entire focus had narrowed to a single point. Room 412. The drive downtown passed in a blur of streetlights and stop signs. My fingers drummed against the steering wheel at every red light, my foot hovering over the gas pedal, ready to surge forward. I took Monroe Street instead of the highway, cutting through the warehouse district where traffic thinned to nothing. The speedometer crept up, 45 in a 30 zone, then 50. The Riverside Hotel materialized through my windshield like a monument to betrayal. 12 stories of steel and glass, glowing warm against the darkening sky. Valet attendants in burgundy uniforms clustered near the entrance, their breath visible in white puffs. I drove past them to the self-parking garage entrance, tires squealing as I descended the concrete spiral to the underground levels. I found a spot near the elevator and killed the engine. For a moment, I sat in the sudden silence, my hands still gripping the wheel. My wedding ring caught the fluorescent lighting, throwing tiny rainbows across the dashboard. 23 years I'd worn that ring. 23 years of building a life with Marcus, of weathering storms together, of believing we were solid. The elevator doors stood 20 feet away, brushed steel reflecting my distorted image back at me. I looked wild, hair disheveled from running my hands through it, lipstick worn off, eyes too bright with unshed tears and adrenaline. I pulled down the visor mirror and tried to smooth my appearance, then stopped. Why did it matter? I wasn't here to look pretty. I was here for truth. My phone buzzed. "David. On my way. What's this about?" I typed back quickly. "4th floor, room 412. Just be there." The elevator chimed as it arrived, doors sliding open with mechanical precision. I stepped inside and pressed 4, watching the garage level disappear as the car ascended. My reflection stared back from the polished walls, a 57-year-old woman about to confront the implosion of her marriage. The number display climbed. 1, 2, 3, 4. The elevator doors slid open onto the 4th floor, revealing cream-colored walls and burgundy carpet that muffled my footsteps. Sconces cast amber pools of light every 10 feet along the corridor. I turned right, following the brass room numbers that climbed steadily. 408, 409, 410. My breath came shallow and quick. The hallway stretched endlessly ahead, and I forced myself to keep moving, one foot in front of the other. A housekeeping cart sat abandoned near 411, white towels stacked in precise pyramids, the smell of bleach and lavender fighting for dominance. Room 412 materialized on my left. I pressed my ear against the door, hearing nothing but the rush of blood in my own head. My hand trembled as I raised it to knock, then stopped. The keycard sat in my purse. David had given it to me months ago when we'd held Marcus's surprise birthday dinner here. I'd never returned it. I slid the card through the reader. The lock mechanism clicked green, and I pushed the door open. The suite was dim, curtains drawn against the evening. A laptop sat open on the desk, screen glowing blue in the darkness. I moved toward it, my shoes sinking into plush carpeting. The bathroom door stood ajar, light spilling out in a yellow rectangle. Water ran in the sink. I reached the laptop and turned it to face me. The screen showed a video chat window, messages scrolling up the side. My eyes caught on the profile picture. A blonde woman with pouty lips and smoky eyes. The username read Scarlet Desire. The water shut off. I spun toward the bathroom just as the door swung fully open. Steam billowed out, and through it emerged my sister-in-law, wrapped in a white hotel robe. Her dark hair hung wet around her shoulders. She froze when she saw me, her hand still on the doorknob. Aria. The name fell from her lips like an accusation. I stared at her, my brain struggling to process what my eyes were seeing. This was Jade, Marcus's younger sister, the woman who'd stood beside me at my wedding, who'd held my hand through my mother's funeral, who'd called me every Sunday for 2 decades. You? The word came out strangled. She straightened, pulling the robe tighter around herself. Her jaw set in that stubborn way I'd seen 1,000 times, usually directed at other people. Never at me. I lunged forward and grabbed the laptop, spinning it to face her. The chat logs filled the screen. Months of messages, intimate confessions, photos I recognized as ones Marcus had sent from business trips. My business trips, where he'd supposedly been alone. How long? I demanded. Jade didn't answer. She moved toward the closet, her movements deliberate and unhurried. From inside, she pulled out clothes, not her usual style, but the kind of things the woman in those photos would wear. Tight dresses, stiletto heels, a blonde wig on a foam head. My stomach turned. I crossed the distance between us in 3 strides and shoved her backward. She stumbled against the closet door, eyes flashing with something between fear and defiance. "How long have you been doing this?" I shouted. She caught her balance and pushed past me, heading for the desk where her phone sat charging. I grabbed her wrist, feeling her pulse hammering beneath my fingers. She tried to pull away, but I held firm. 2 years, she said finally. It's been 2 years. The words hit like a physical blow. I released her wrist and stepped back, needing space to breathe. 2 years. While I'd been caring for Marcus's father in his final months. While we'd renovated the kitchen together. While we'd celebrated our 21st anniversary with champagne and promises. Jade rubbed her wrist, red marks already forming where I'd gripped her. She moved to the minibar and pulled out a small bottle of vodka, twisting off the cap with shaking hands. "He was lonely," she said, not looking at me. "You were always working, always busy. He just needed someone to talk to." I felt the rage building in my chest, hot and suffocating. I grabbed the bottle from her hand and slammed it onto the desk. Vodka splashed across the wood, soaking into scattered papers. "So you pretended to be someone else? You catfished your own brother?" "He's not my brother by blood," she snapped back. "He's only—" The door burst open. Marcus stood in the doorway, his face pale, David right behind him. Marcus's eyes went from me to Jade to the laptop screen still glowing with evidence. His briefcase slipped from his fingers and hit the floor with a dull thud. I watched Marcus's face crumble as he stepped closer to the laptop, his eyes scanning the messages. His hand reached out, trembling, fingers hovering over the trackpad before jerking back as if the device might burn him. The room seemed to shrink, walls pressing in as we all stood frozen in our separate pools of dread. "Marcus," I started, but my voice came out strangled. He held up one hand, silencing me without looking away from the screen. His chest rose and fell rapidly beneath his dress shirt, the fabric straining with each breath. I could see the vein in his temple pulsing, that telltale sign that his blood pressure was spiking. He scrolled through the messages, his jaw clenching tighter with each revelation. Jade backed toward the window, her shoulder blades pressing against the glass. She crossed her arms over her chest, fingers digging into her own biceps hard enough to leave marks. Her carefully applied makeup had started to streak, mascara bleeding down her cheeks in thin black rivers. "Those pictures," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. "You sent me pictures of yourself. I thought—" He stopped, pressing his palm against his forehead. "Jesus Christ, I thought she was real." I moved toward him, but David stepped between us, his broad frame blocking my path. His cologne mixed with the acrid smell of spilled vodka, making my stomach turn. He looked at me with something I couldn't quite read, pity mixed with contempt. "You need to calm down," David said to me. "Calm down!" I laughed, the sound harsh and brittle. "Your wife has been manipulating my husband for 2 years, and you want me to calm down?" Marcus finally turned to face Jade. His eyes were red-rimmed, wet with unshed tears that he refused to let fall. He took 3 deliberate steps toward her, each footfall heavy against the hotel carpet. She pressed harder against the window, nowhere left to go. "Did you enjoy it?" he asked. "Reading everything I told you? Every doubt, every fear, every private thought I had about my marriage?" Jade's mouth opened and closed, no sound emerging. She looked to David, but her husband had turned away, his attention fixed on the minibar with the intensity of a man drowning. I grabbed the laptop and began scrolling through the messages myself, my fingers flying across the trackpad. Each message was a knife sliding between my ribs. Marcus had shared things with this fake woman, with his sister-in-law pretending to be a stranger, that he'd never told me. Complaints about my long hours at the hospital, his fear that we'd grown apart, his loneliness in our own bed. "There are hundreds of messages here," I said, my voice shaking. "Thousands, maybe." Marcus sank onto the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. His shoulders shook, but he made no sound. I'd seen him cry exactly twice in our 21 years together, at his father's funeral and when his mother had her stroke. This silent trembling was worse than any tears. David finally spoke, his back still to all of us. "I found out 3 months ago." The confession hung in the air. I stared at his rigid spine, watching him pour vodka into a glass with steady hands, despite the bomb he'd just dropped. "You knew?" Marcus lifted his head, eyes blazing. "You knew what she was doing, and you said nothing?" "She promised she'd stop." David downed the vodka in one gulp and poured another. "She said it was just conversation, that it was harmless." I lunged for Jade, my hands reaching for her throat before I even realized I'd moved. She shrieked and dodged sideways, stumbling over the desk chair. I caught the collar of her blouse instead, fabric tearing as she wrenched away. Buttons scattered across the floor, tiny white projectiles bouncing under furniture. Marcus grabbed me from behind, his arms wrapping around my waist and lifting me off my feet. I kicked backward, my heel connecting with his shin. He grunted but didn't let go, carrying me away from Jade and depositing me on the opposite side of the room. "Stop," he said, positioning himself between us. "Just stop." My chest heaved, lungs burning as I struggled to catch my breath. My hands throbbed where I'd made contact with Jade, palms stinging. I looked down and saw blood under my thumbnail. Must have scratched her without realizing it. Jade clutched her torn blouse closed, a thin red line visible on her collarbone where my nail had caught skin. She was crying openly now, mascara painting grotesque trails down to her jaw. Her perfectly styled hair had come loose from its pins, hanging in disheveled chunks around her face. "I need to leave," I said, pushing past Marcus toward the door. He caught my wrist, his grip gentle despite everything. "We need to talk about this." "Talk?" I jerked my arm free. "You've been talking to her for 2 years. I think you've done enough talking." I grabbed my purse from where I'd dropped it earlier and headed for the exit. My hands shook so violently that I couldn't get the door handle to turn at first. Finally, it clicked open, and I stumbled into the hallway, the industrial carpet muffling my footsteps as I ran toward the elevators. Behind me, I heard Marcus calling my name, his voice cracking. I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The elevator doors slid open on the ground floor, and I lurched into the lobby, blinking against the harsh fluorescent lights. My reflection caught in the glass entrance doors, hair wild, lipstick smeared across my chin, one earring missing. I looked like someone who'd been in a fight. I had been in a fight. The parking garage's concrete walls pressed in around me as I stumbled toward my car. My keys slipped from my trembling fingers twice before I managed to unlock the door. The leather seat felt cold through my torn blouse. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing, but my body wouldn't cooperate. My ribs ached from where I'd slammed into the desk during the struggle. I drove on autopilot, taking turns without thinking, and ended up at my mother's house instead of my own. The porch light was on. I sat in the driveway for 10 minutes before I could force myself to move. When I finally knocked, my mother opened the door wearing her bathrobe, reading glasses perched on her nose. She took one look at me and stepped aside. "Come in." I made it 3 steps into her living room before my legs gave out. I sank onto her couch, and the dam broke. Tears I'd been holding back since leaving that office poured out in ugly, choking sobs. My mother disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a warm washcloth. She knelt beside me, gently wiping the blood and makeup from my face without asking questions. "It's Jade," I finally managed to say between gasps. She's been pretending to be someone else online, talking to Marcus, for 2 years." My mother's hand paused mid-wipe. She lowered the cloth slowly, her jaw tightening. "Your brother's wife?" I nodded. Fresh tears spilled over. "I found messages, pictures. He thought he was talking to a woman named Simone. But it was her. She was catfishing him." My mother stood, her knees cracking. She walked to her liquor cabinet and poured 2 glasses of bourbon without speaking. When she handed me one, her hand was shaking too. I drank it in one burning gulp. The alcohol hit my empty stomach like acid. I'd skipped lunch, too nervous about confronting Jade to eat. That felt like years ago now instead of hours. "Does your brother know?" my mother asked. "I don't know. I left." I pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes. I attacked her. "Mom, I lost it." I grabbed her and we fought, and Marcus had to pull me off. My phone buzzed in my purse. Then again, and again. I pulled it out with numb fingers. 17 missed calls from Marcus, 23 text messages. I scrolled through them, watching his tone shift from apologetic to desperate to angry. The last one made my stomach drop. "I'm coming over. We need to fix this." "He's on his way to my house," I said. My mother took the phone from my hands and powered it off. "You're staying here tonight." I wanted to argue, to say I needed to face him, to figure this out. But exhaustion crashed over me like a physical weight. My adrenaline was draining away, leaving only pain in its wake. My scalp throbbed where Jade had yanked my hair. My knuckles were swelling, The skin split across 2 fingers. My mother brought ice wrapped in a kitchen towel. I pressed it against my hand, wincing as the cold bit into the raw flesh. We sat in silence while the ice melted, water dripping through the towel onto my lap. Around midnight, headlights swept across the living room window. A car door slammed. Heavy footsteps approached the porch. The doorbell rang, followed by insistent knocking. "I know she's in there," Marcus shouted through the door. "Her car's in the driveway." My mother stood, positioning herself between me and the front door. She didn't open it. "Go home," she called out. "She doesn't want to see you." "This is between me and my wife." His voice cracked on the last word. "Your wife is bleeding," my mother said. "Come back tomorrow when you've calmed down." Silence. Then more knocking, harder this time. The doorframe rattled. I stood up, my legs unsteady, and walked to the door. My mother grabbed my arm, but I shook my head. I couldn't hide forever. I opened the door 6 inches, keeping the chain lock engaged. Marcus stood on the porch, still wearing his work clothes. His tie was gone, shirt untucked. His eyes were red-rimmed and wild. "How long have you known?" he asked. 3 days. My voice came out hoarse. "I've been trying to figure out what to do." He laughed, a bitter sound that had no humor in it. "So, you decided to assault my sister and humiliate me at my workplace? Your sister has been manipulating you for 2 years." The words ripped out of me. "She created a fake person to seduce you? To steal you from me?" "Nothing happened," he said. "We never met in person. It was just talking." "Just talking?" I gripped the doorframe to keep from swaying. "You told that fake woman, things you never told me. You shared parts of yourself I never got to see." His face twisted. "Because you stopped asking. You stopped caring about anything except your work and your routine." The accusation hit like a slap. Maybe there was truth in it. Maybe I had pulled away first, gotten too comfortable, stopped trying. But that didn't excuse what Jade had done. What he had done. "Get off my mother's porch," I said, and closed the door. He pounded on it 3 more times before his footsteps retreated. The car engine roared to life, and tires squealed as he pulled away. I didn't sleep. The ceiling above my childhood bed had the same water stain shaped like a bird that I'd stared at through chickenpox and heartbreaks and the night before my wedding. Now, I watched it again, my body rigid beneath the quilt, listening to every car that passed outside. At 3 in the morning, my phone lit up. Not Marcus this time. Jade. The message was a photograph. Me, mid-lunge across that restaurant table, my face contorted with rage, hands reaching for her throat. Someone had captured the exact moment before I'd connected. The angle made me look deranged, feral. Below it, assault charges filed. My lawyer says you'll lose everything. I sat up, my chest constricting. The room tilted. She'd planned this. Let me attack her in a public place with witnesses. Probably had someone ready with a camera. I'd walked straight into it, let my fury override every bit of sense. The bedroom door cracked open. My mother stood there in her robe, her face drawn. "Baby, there's someone here." "Marcus?" "Police." My hands went numb. I pulled on jeans and followed her downstairs, each step feeling like walking underwater. Through the front window, I could see the patrol car's lights painting the neighbors' houses in rotating blue. 2 officers stood on the porch. The older one, a woman with silver hair pulled back tight, held a clipboard. "Are you Aria Foster?" "Yes." "We need you to come down to the station. There's been a complaint filed, and we have some questions. Am I being arrested? My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Not at this time, but we need your statement regarding an incident at Meridian Bistro yesterday afternoon. I grabbed my jacket and kissed my mother's cheek. She was crying, gripping my hand too tight. Call Dennis, I told her. My lawyer. His number's in my phone. The ride downtown passed in a blur of streetlights and empty intersections. They put me in a small room with a metal table and told me to wait. The clock on the wall ticked too loud. I watched the second hand make its circuits, each rotation tightening the knot in my stomach. The door opened. Not a cop. Jade. She walked in like she owned the room, her neck wrapped in a bandage that was completely unnecessary for the minimal contact I'd made. Her eyes held a gleam that made my skin crawl. What are you doing here? I stood up, the chair scraping concrete. The officers said I could speak with you before giving my formal statement. I wanted to offer you a way out. She moved closer, staying just beyond arm's reach. Smart. Her smile was thin, calculated. Drop the complaint, I said. You know you manipulated him. I created a fantasy, she interrupted. Nothing illegal about that. But assault? She touched the bandage delicately. That leaves marks, evidence. What do you want? Marcus. The word came out simple, direct. Divorce him, walk away clean, sign papers saying you won't contest, won't ask for anything. Do that, and I'll tell them it was all a misunderstanding. My fingers dug into my palms. You're insane. I'm in love. She leaned against the table, casual. I've been in love with him since he brought you home for Thanksgiving 12 years ago. You got him by accident. Geography, timing. But I know him. I understand him in ways you never could. You catfished him with a fake identity. I showed him who he really wanted to be with. Without the baggage of family expectations, he chose me, the real me, just without the name attached yet. The door burst open. Marcus filled the doorway, his chest heaving like he'd run up the stairs. His eyes locked on Jade first, then swung to me. The shock on his face was genuine. What the hell is this? He demanded. Jade, what are you doing here? She straightened, her composure flickering. I'm handling... Did you have her arrested? He moved between us, and I saw his hands shaking. Jesus Christ, Jade, did you actually press charges? She attacked me in public. You saw the bruises? You've been lying to me for 2 years. His voice cracked the air like thunder. You created a fake person. You manipulated me. Made me think I was falling for someone new when it was you the whole time, playing games. I watched Jade's face crumble, the calculated mask slipping. She reached for his arm, but he jerked away. Marcus, please, if you just listen. I came here to drop my own complaint, he said. Breaking and entering, identity theft, harassment. My lawyer's been on the phone all night pulling together evidence. He pulled out his phone, held it up. Screenshots filled the display. Every message, every photo you sent is Bristol. The IP addresses match your apartment, your devices. Jade's face went white. She looked at me, then back at him, her mouth opening and closing. The door opened again, and the silver-haired officer stepped in, her expression hard. Ms. Foster, you're free to go, she said to me. Then to Jade. Ms. Foster, we need to have a conversation about filing false reports and possible fraud charges. I stepped out of the interrogation room, my legs unsteady beneath me. The fluorescent lights of the precinct hallway stretched endlessly ahead, each tube buzzing with a low electric hum that matched the ringing in my ears. Behind me, Jade's voice rose in pitch. pleading now instead of commanding. The door clicked shut, muffling her protests. Marcus caught up with me near the water cooler, his footsteps heavy on the linoleum. He didn't touch me, just stood there with his hands hanging at his sides, opening and closing into fists. His wedding ring caught the harsh overhead light. I stared at it, remembering when I'd slipped it onto his finger 23 years ago. "I didn't know," he said. "Not until 3 days ago when Jade, sent me a photo with the background visible. Your grandmother's vase was in the reflection." I pressed the cold button on the water cooler, watched the stream fill a paper cup. The water splashed against the sides, a few drops hitting my hand. I drank it in one gulp, the coolness doing nothing to ease the tightness in my throat. 3 days, I repeated. My voice sounded like sandpaper. "You knew for 3 days and didn't tell me." I was gathering proof. He pulled out his phone again, scrolled through screens with quick, angry swipes. "My lawyer said without evidence, it would be my word against hers. She's family. People would think I was lying to cover up an affair." I crumpled the paper cup, the thin wax coating crinkling under my fingers. The waste bin was 5 feet away. I threw it and missed. Marcus bent to pick it up, his movement slow, almost mechanical. When he straightened, his eyes were bloodshot. "I contacted a digital forensics expert," he continued. "Cost me $3,000 for an emergency analysis. They traced every message, every email, every photo. Found metadata, timestamps, location data. All of it pointed to Jade's devices, her apartment, her work computer." An officer walked past us, keys jangling on his belt. I watched him disappear around the corner before moving toward the exit. My purse felt heavy on my shoulder, the weight of my phone and keys suddenly enormous. Marcus followed, maintaining that careful distance, like I was made of glass and might shatter if he got too close. The precinct doors opened automatically with a pneumatic hiss. Outside, dawn was breaking, streaking the sky with pale orange and purple. The air hit my face, cool and damp with morning dew. I breathed it in deep, filling my lungs until they ached. Cars lined the street, their windshields wet with condensation. Somewhere a bird was singing, oblivious to the wreckage of my life. "Where's your car?" Marcus asked. I took an Uber. I started walking, not sure where I was going, just needing to move. My feet carried me down the concrete steps, each one jarring my spine. "They arrested me at the grocery store. Everyone was staring." He caught up, walking beside me now. His shoulder almost brushed mine. "I'll drive you home." "I don't want to go home." We reached his car, the silver sedan he'd bought last year. He unlocked it with a beep that echoed off the precinct walls. I stood there, staring at my reflection in the passenger window. My hair was a mess, my shirt wrinkled from being processed and fingerprinted. I looked old, tired, like someone I didn't recognize. "The lawyer says we have grounds for a restraining order," Marcus said. "Against Jade, and I'm filing for legal separation from my family if they try to defend what she did." I pulled open the car door, slid into the seat. The leather was cold against my legs. Marcus got in on the driver's side but didn't start the engine. He gripped the steering wheel with both hands, his knuckles white. "I was lonely," he said quietly. "After your mom died, you were so focused on settling the estate. We barely talked. I felt invisible in my own marriage." My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. I turned to look out the window, watching a homeless man push a shopping cart down the sidewalk. Everything he owned piled in rusted metal, wheels squeaking with each rotation. "So you went looking for someone else?" "I went looking for connection." His voice cracked. I didn't think I was doing anything wrong, Bristol was just someone to talk to, someone who seemed interested in my day, my thoughts, my life. Bristol was your sister. I spat the words out. Creating a fantasy to manipulate you. To what? Break us up? Take my place? Marcus started the engine. It rumbled to life, vibrating through the seat. He pulled out of the parking space slowly, checking his mirrors twice. The precision of his movements, the careful attention to every detail, made something in my chest twist. This was the man I'd married. Methodical, responsible, decent, and he'd fallen for a fiction. We drove in silence through empty streets. The city was just waking up, delivery trucks making their rounds, bakeries lighting up their windows. I watched it all pass by, feeling disconnected from everything. My phone buzzed in my purse. I ignored it. "What do you want?" I finally asked. He turned onto our street, the trees forming a canopy overhead. Our house appeared at the end of the block, the porch light still on from when I'd left yesterday morning, a lifetime ago. "I want to fix this," he said. I opened the car door before he'd fully stopped. My feet hit the pavement, and I walked up the driveway without looking back. Behind me, I heard his door open, his footsteps following. The front door key felt foreign in my hand as I unlocked it. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it. My coffee cup still sat on the kitchen counter, lipstick stain on the rim. The newspaper lay open to the crossword puzzle, half finished. Evidence of a normal morning in a life that no longer existed. Marcus stood in the doorway, not entering. Waiting. "I need time," I said, my back to him. "I need you to leave." The silence stretched out. Then his footsteps retreated, growing fainter. The front door closed with a soft click. Story block 1010. 6 months had passed, and I stood in the kitchen of my new apartment, sunlight streaming through windows I'd dressed with sheer curtains that filtered the morning light into something softer, gentler. The space was smaller than the house Marcus and I had shared, but every corner belonged entirely to me. I'd painted the bedroom walls a deep teal, hung artwork I'd chosen without compromise, filled the shelves with books that interested no one but myself. The coffee maker gurgled its completion, and I poured the dark liquid into a mug I'd bought at a pottery studio last month. My hands were steady. No trembling, no anxiety tightening my chest. Just the simple pleasure of morning caffeine and the weekend stretching ahead. My phone lit up with a message from my therapist confirming Tuesday's appointment. I'd been seeing Dr. Chen weekly since everything fell apart, working through the betrayal, the anger, the grief for a marriage that had rotted from the inside while I'd been too trusting to notice. The sessions had been brutal at first, forcing me to examine my own blind spots. But now they felt like maintenance rather than emergency surgery. I walked to the balcony and stepped outside, feeling the October breeze against my face. Below, the neighborhood bustled with Saturday morning energy. Joggers on the sidewalk, a couple walking their retriever, someone loading groceries from their trunk. Normal life, continuing its ordinary rhythms. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks ago. Marcus had tried to contest it initially, hired an expensive attorney who sent letters full of legal language about reconciliation periods and marital counseling requirements. I'd stood firm. My own lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, who took no nonsense from opposing counsel, had pushed everything through with ruthless efficiency. Vanessa had disappeared after I'd confronted her at that restaurant. She'd deleted all her social media accounts, changed her phone number, apparently moved out of the condo she'd been renting downtown. Marcus told me, during one of our few necessary communications about asset division, that his sister had relocated to Phoenix, that she was getting help, I'd felt nothing hearing this news. No satisfaction, no anger, just a vast indifference that stretched like an empty desert. My brother Daniel had helped me move into this apartment, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs without complaint. He'd assembled furniture, hung curtains, made sure I had everything I needed. We didn't talk much about what had happened, but his presence had been exactly what I required. Solid, dependable, asking nothing in return. I sipped my coffee and watched a family loading camping gear into their SUV across the street. The parents worked together with practiced coordination, the teenage daughter rolling her eyes at something her younger brother said. The mundane choreography of functional relationships. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Keisha, my colleague from the hospital where I worked as a nurse. She'd invited me to a dinner party next Friday, mentioned casually that her cousin would be there, a photographer who'd just moved back to the city. I recognized the setup for what it was and smiled despite myself. 6 months ago, the thought of dating would have made me physically ill. Now it just felt premature, but not impossible. I texted back that I'd come to the dinner, but made no promises beyond that. The balcony plants I'd bought last month were thriving in their terracotta pots. Basil, rosemary, cherry tomatoes just beginning to turn red. I touched the basil leaves, releasing their sharp fragrance into the air. These small acts of cultivation felt significant somehow. Evidence that I could nurture something and watch it grow. Inside, I pulled out the folder I'd been avoiding all week. Divorce paperwork, bank statements, the deed to the house that Marcus was buying out my half of. Patricia had gotten me a good settlement. More than fair, she'd said with satisfaction, considering the circumstances. The money sat in my account, a cushion I'd never had before. I'd started researching master's programs, thinking about nurse practitioner certification, maybe a complete career shift into something that had always interested me, but seemed impractical when I'd been focused on maintaining a marriage. I signed the final documents with slow, deliberate strokes. My signature looked different somehow, more assured, taking up more space on the page. The afternoon stretched ahead with delicious emptiness. I'd planned nothing, which itself felt luxurious. Maybe I'd drive to that art gallery opening downtown, or visit the farmer's market, or simply read the novel that had been sitting on my nightstand for 2 weeks. The choice was entirely mine. My reflection caught in the mirror by the door. A 57-year-old woman in jeans and a soft gray sweater, hair pulled back, minimal makeup, eyes clear and focused. I looked different than I had 6 months ago. The perpetual tension had left my shoulders. The lines around my mouth had softened. I looked like someone who'd survived something difficult and come out lighter on the other side. The apartment was quiet except for the distant sounds of the city beyond my windows. No footsteps I needed to interpret, no mood I needed to gauge and adjust to. Just my own presence, sufficient and complete. I picked up my keys and headed for the door, ready for whatever the day would bring. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.